Have you ever stopped to reflect on how certain events seem to follow such a precise pattern that they almost appear to be part of a divine plan? What if I told you that there is a prophecy in the Bible that not only predicts future events, but also establishes exact dates for them? Yes, this prophecy exists and is recorded in the book of Daniel. It is known as the prophecy of the 70 weeks, one of the most impressive revelations about the end times. Now imagine a prophecy so detailed that it managed to predict the coming of the Messiah, the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, and even events that have yet to occur. How would that be possible? This is the big question we are going to explore today. If you have never heard about this, or if you are already familiar with this prophecy but never fully understood its impact, get ready. What you are about to discover may completely change your perspective on history and the future. The prophecy of the 70 weeks is a true map of divine time, and to understand it, we need to look at the context in which it was revealed. Daniel, one of the most respected prophets of the Old Testament, was living in a moment of great expectation. The people of Israel had been exiled in Babylon for decades, and he longed for answers. He wanted to know when the promise of the restoration of Israel would be fulfilled. It was then that he delved into the scriptures and found a prophecy from the prophet Jeremiah that stated the exile would last 70 years. This was a significant number, but what Daniel did not expect was that God had a much greater plan. By seeking God in prayer and fasting, Daniel received an impressive vision from the angel Gabriel, who brought a revelation that went far beyond the return of the people to their homeland. God was revealing the timetable for the redemption of humanity. Gabriel's message was clear. God had determined a period of 70 weeks of years, that is 490 years, for the realization of his redemption plan. This time was divided into three main phases. First phase, 7 weeks of years, 49 years. During this period, Jerusalem would be rebuilt. This was a time of hardship, but also of great restoration for the Jewish people. Second phase, 62 weeks of years, 434 years. This period would culminate with the coming of the Messiah, but also with a tragic event, the moment he would be rejected and killed. Third phase, the final week, 7 years. Here is where the prophecy becomes even more intriguing, as this final week has not yet been fully fulfilled. This is the part that involves the final events of human history. What is impressive about this prophecy is the precision of the calculations. If we analyze the period of the second phase, the 434 years between the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the coming of the Messiah, we see that it was fulfilled exactly with Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. In other words, the prophecy has already accurately pinpointed the past with absurd precision. And this leads us to an inevitable question: what will happen in the last week? The last week of the prophecy, the final 7 years, is the major point of discussion among theologians and scholars. This period is described as a time of intense tribulation, in which a world leader will make a peace pact, but then break it and bring a time of great suffering for humanity. This event is often associated with the Antichrist, a prophetic figure mentioned in various passages of the Bible. Gabriel revealed to Daniel that in the middle of the last week, that is, after 3.5 years, this leader would break the pact and bring the abomination of desolation, an event also cited by Jesus in the New Testament. This final 3.5-year period is described as the most difficult times humanity has ever faced. Now stop and think. If everything that has been predicted so far has been fulfilled with absolute precision, why would the last week be different? This means that we are living in the interval between the 69th and the 70th week. In other words, we are in a waiting period for the fulfillment of the last part of this prophecy. This pause is not a mistake, but a time of grace in which God has allowed salvation to extend to all nations. However, the scriptures indicate that the prophetic clock will start ticking again, and when that happens, the world will witness events it has never imagined. This leads us to an important question. What should we do in light of this revelation? If we know that God has fulfilled every detail of His word up to now, this means we can trust Him for what is yet to come. This is not a reason for fear, but for preparation. Just as Daniel sought God in prayer, fasting, and studying the word, we too need to be spiritually ready. The prophecy of the 70 weeks is not just a prediction about the future. It is a reminder that God is in absolute control of history. Even when the world seems chaotic, He has already established a plan, and nothing escapes His purpose. In the following moments, we will explore what the last week of Daniel reveals about current days and how this prophecy is connected with the events we are living through. What we are seeing in the world today could be a foretaste of what is to come. What are the signs that indicate that this last week might be about to begin? Stay tuned, because the answers we will reveal next may completely change your view of the future. If we look at the current global scenario, we will see a series of events that seem to echo the prophecy of the last week of Daniel. Growing political instability, global conflicts, advances in control technology, and the search for unified governance are elements that many scholars identify as signs that the countdown to the fulfillment of the last week may have already begun. Within the prophecy, what stands out is the figure of the world leader who will emerge on the political scene and make a pact with many nations. This pact will be seen as a great milestone of peace, but, as we have already mentioned, this peace will be illusory. The Bible warns us that this leader will betray his alliance and institute a time of unprecedented persecution and suffering. The breaking of this agreement will be the definitive sign that the last 3.5 years of the prophecy have begun. This period is described as the Great Tribulation, a time when humanity will face crises like never before. In biblical accounts, we find various descriptions of this moment. Jesus, when speaking about the end times in Matthew 24, warned his disciples about the massive deception that would come upon the world. He said that false prophets would arise, many would be deceived, and there would be a time of such great suffering that if God did not shorten those days, no one would survive. But what exactly will happen during this last week? The prophecy suggests that this period will be marked by 3 major events. The establishment of a global government. This leader will bring an apparently perfect solution to world problems. Many will see him as a savior, someone capable of uniting all nations and establishing an efficient control system to end crises. The breaking of the pact and the beginning of persecution. In the middle of the week, that is, after 3.5 years, he will reveal his true intentions. The world will undergo a major upheaval, and those who refuse to follow him will be persecuted. The abomination of desolation in the temple. This is one of the central events of the last week. According to the prophecy, this leader will enter God's temple and establish something profane there, demanding worship for himself. This profanation has already happened in the past, when Antiochus IV Epiphanes sacrificed an unclean animal on the temple altar. However, Jesus made it clear that this would happen again, but in an even more intense and global manner. Another important detail is that this last week will culminate in the triumphant return of Christ. The Bible describes this event in a spectacular way. Jesus will return in glory, defeating this deceitful leader and restoring justice on earth. This will be the moment of the final victory over darkness and the establishment of the kingdom of God. What is most impressive about all this is that God's own timing is determined. None of these events happen by chance. Everything is planned and will follow the schedule that was revealed centuries ago to the prophet Daniel. But if we know this, what should our response be? Daniel's prophecy teaches us an essential lesson. We need to be prepared. Daniel did not just hear the message and continue his life as if nothing had happened. He prayed, sought understanding, and remained faithful to God. He understood that even in difficult times, God's purpose would be fulfilled in due time. The same applies to us. If everything that has been predicted so far has been fulfilled exactly, we must take seriously what is yet to come. And how do we prepare? Spiritual vigilance. We need to be attentive to events and seek discernment about the times we live in. Faithfulness to God. Just like Daniel, we must remain firm in our faith, regardless of the circumstances around us. Knowledge of the Word. The Bible not only warns us about what will happen, but also shows us how we should live. The more we know the Scriptures, the better prepared we will be. Constant prayer. Daniel received revelations because he dedicated himself to a life of prayer. This is one of the greatest examples we can follow. The prophecy of the 70 weeks shows us something incredible. God has already determined the end from the beginning. Nothing escapes divine control, and this should bring us security, not fear. If we know that everything is under God's dominion, then we can trust that He will continue to fulfill His promises. Now, in light of these revelations, one question remains: how does this impact your life? The truth is that we are living in the interval between the 69th and the 70th week. We are at a decisive moment in history where every choice we make matters. If this prophecy is real and the events already fulfilled prove that it is, then we need to reflect. How are we living today? Are we ready for what is to come? Time is precious. We do not know exactly when this last week will begin, but we know that we are getting closer and closer to it. Therefore, the best decision we can make is to align ourselves with God's plan. Just as Daniel remained firm and dedicated, we must do the same. The future has already been written, but the decision about how we will live is still in our hands. In light of this revelation, one essential question remains: are you ready? The prophecy of the 70 weeks reminds us that God is in control and His plan will be fulfilled. Now is the time to seek understanding, strengthen our faith, and draw closer to God. Nothing that happens is by chance, and the prophetic clock is ticking. The choice is yours. Live ignoring the signs or prepare for what is to come. If this message impacted you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell. God has great plans, and you are a part of them.